So how do you figure out which of these options might be right for you? These are just a few thoughts, questions to ask yourself that might help guide you down this path. So do you want to help people? Well, great, because most of these do that in some capacity. Do you want direct interaction with patients? If you do, then you are more likely, you should be a clinician, either a clinical psychologist or a medical doctor. Within that, do you want to have a long relationship with your patients? If so, this is more in the realm of pediatrician, where you have the same patients all through childhood and adolescence, family medicine, internal medicine. If this is less important to you, then you might be a specialist. Which of these is more interesting to you? Do you like talking with patients and figuring this out with them? Do you like solving diagnostic puzzles, or do you like specifically fixing a problem? Because these might each lead you to different paths. Are you more interested in helping people with their physical well-being or their mental well-being? And these are not separate. They're very much overlapping. But if you're more interested in helping people with their physical well-being, that might be more medical doctor, as opposed to mental well-being would be a clinical psychologist. Do you want to lead research projects? If so, then your goal is to be a principal investigator. This is often a research faculty. It doesn't have to be necessarily, but that's the traditional path. If you want to lead research projects, the traditional path is going on to become faculty at a university. There are plenty of people, though, who love science and love doing research, but don't necessarily want to be the one leading the project. There are, of course, pros and cons with all of these options. And for some people, the pressure of having to apply for grants and being responsible for a large group of people is not ideal. And in these situations, perhaps a staff scientist position or a data analyst position is more appropriate. And there are plenty of these as well. How well do you handle long periods of work before you have success? Are you stoic in the face of constant small failures? Because this is a critical trait for research. You don't come home at the end of the day, every day, and say, I know that I made this progress today. I know that I solved this problem. You might have days go by or weeks where you're working on something and you can't figure it out. And you finally figure it out down the line, but it's not the sort of job where you come home necessarily with a clear indication of what exactly you've accomplished. So you need to, that's a really critical trait for research, being able to handle that. Do you like writing? If so, then research is a good option. There is a constant need to write papers and grants, papers to communicate the scientific results that you have found, and grants to support doing more science. And this is how your science is judged. You need to write papers to show that you're doing the science. You need to write the grants to have the money to do the science. And then you need both of those to get more grants to write more papers, and so on. Do you like working with your hands? If so, then perhaps surgery is within the medical field more interesting to you, or perhaps building imaging tools if you're on the MRI side of things, being a magnetic resonance imaging specialist. And what sort of lifestyle are you looking for? What sort of work-life balance? So there are the traditional 9 to 5, none of these are easy options. And for the most part, you can find one versus the other in all of these. Some doctors have a very standard 8 to 5, 7 to 5, 7 to 4 period of time where they work, they see patients, and they go home and maybe they do notes, but there is a set working hours. Some researchers also have very set working hours. But for others, there's more flexibility. It might mean that you are working more outside of these standard hours, but you have more flexibility during the day. Sometimes this is more in research, more in the academic side. And there are many, many caveats to all of this. We can't really talk about these are all generalizations. So there's plenty of examples again for and against all of these, but flexibility, academic life tends to be a bit more flexible in terms of directing your own day, directing your own course of research. Both MD and PhD can involve multiple moves. So you might have many years where you have very little control over where you are in the country or in the world. Whether it's applying to medical schools and graduate schools where you get in, after those, applying to postdocs or fellowships, residencies, moving for those. If you stay in the academic path, applying for faculty positions, having to move again. So there are long periods where you don't necessarily get to decide where you live, or you might have to make sacrifices and have to make choices about what's more important to you in terms of living someplace versus having certain supports or amenities. And how do you handle unknowns? Are they exciting to you or are they scary? This is something that I think is an important trait for research. I think probably many doctors would say that it's something that is exciting for them in medicine as well. But if you don't like to face things not being known, if you need to have everything wrapped up in a neat little box where you have the answer, and there are no more questions, then research is not going to be the path for you. Every project that I've done, we answer some questions and we open up more. And that's the exciting thing for me, because then there's more questions that I can go and answer the next time around. And every time we're learning more, and every time we're pushing it further and doing more. But if you need to have a final, we have determined this, then neuroscience research in particular is probably not for you. And do you like big cities? So many, or do you want to be more in a rural area? Suburban can, there are lots of options in between, but many research universities are in or near big cities. So this is something you have to keep in mind, especially if you're doing MRI research. If you're using the big, gigantic $1 million worth of machines, these tend to be at large research universities, which tend to be in or near big cities. So you need to think about where exactly you want to be. Some financial considerations, again, just specific to the US for this one. So, in a perfect world, we would hope that everybody would go into whatever field interests them the most, without having to think about how much it's going to cost or how much they're going to make at the end of it. This is naive, because plenty of people don't have the luxury of just following their heart. So some financial considerations that you need to keep in mind. Psychology PhD programs, currently the average tuition is around $35,000 a year. There are some externships that provide a small stipend during this. Science PhD programs are different in that they usually actually provide a stipend. The tuition is paid for by your PhD mentor, and the stipend varies, but the NIH the National Institutes of Health set a salary guideline, and currently the starting salary for a pre-doctoral trainee, a graduate student, is $36,300 a year. And as we already said, medical school is also very expensive, average tuition being $50,000 or $55,000 a year. As I said, the MD PhD can be paid for, and of course there are plenty of options for financial support if you're able to look for them. Lots of scholarships out there, but you have to look for them. Medical school is expensive unless you look into these options in depth. Continuing this, for the psychology programs, many people start with a master's degree and then go into a PhD program, then an internship, then a fellowship, and then into a traditional job where they might be making more money. Science PhD programs, as I said, usually provide a stipend. Academia generally does not pay as well as the private sector. So if you follow the path of science PhD, postdoc, faculty, certainly going to be a comfortable, well, can't say certainly, probably going to be a comfortable lifestyle depending on where you live and who else in your family is working, but you're not going to get rich in academia. In the private sector, such as in biotech and tech, you can make a lot more money. Data science is a really hot area right now. Data science is basically trying to figure out how to work with large amounts of data and extract meaning from them, extract the patterns, see what the underlying story is. So this is an area, especially in tech, where that's really hot and pay is really good. One thing to keep in mind with science PhD programs, if you go into the traditional academic route, is the issue of soft money versus hard money. Soft money is what we call soft money is grants. So it's grants that you apply for and hopefully receive to pay for your own salary. It's a lot more variable because if there's just not as much grant money to go around, you might come into periods of time where you don't have enough. So that's a soft money position. Hard money is a salary from a university or a college. Hard money positions are usually, but not always, tied to teaching load. So some people will have a certain amount of hard money as their salary if they teach a class or two at their university, and then a certain amount be soft money, which is grants, that is tied to the rest of the research that they do or research that they do over the summer. So there's a lot of variability in terms of this balance of soft and hard money, but it's something to keep in mind. As we've said several times, medical school is expensive. After you finish your program, there's an internship year, there's residency, there's fellowship. These can be very long courses. Most doctors earn a very good salary. So there's, you come out of it, you might come out of it with debt, but you might earn a good salary to pay off that debt. But there is a wide range across specialties. Family medicine is generally one of the less high paid positions, whereas positions like surgeons are generally more higher paid. There's a huge range, both in terms of specialties and in terms of physical location, geographic location around the US. So that is the end of this presentation. All of this information is general guidelines. It's not meant to push you or dissuade you towards or away from any one thing, just to open your eyes to the possibilities and know what all of the what the paths might be. Traditionally in academia, they don't tell you about the non-academic options. They assume that if you've come into a PhD program that you must want to stay in academia. This is definitely changing. There are lots of people who want to go and get a science PhD, but use it for other purposes than being a research professor. So I hope that this has shown you some of the broad range of possibilities where you can use a PhD or an MD.